Iran's currency has effectively collapsed. The rial is trading near 1.5 million per dollar. Back in the 1979, right after the 1979 revolution, it was once about 70 rial per dollar. And now we're at 1.5 million. So it's obviously wiped out savings accounts and making basic goods unaffordable. Obviously, it's led to its collapse of the market. There's banking failures that are trying to be backstopped by the government through even more money creation. This all led to the cycle that we are familiar with as Bitcoiners, destroying any confidence in the money. The response by the citizenry has been to find the harder money that they can that's accessible, which in many cases around the world is the dollar and gold, property, and yes, Bitcoin. And so there's been widespread protests, crackdowns, and the country is just really fracturing right now. And this is a pattern that we know happens, right? This is money is the foundation of society. It's the foundation of civilization, right? You can say that there's possibly other things like human decency or love or respect, mutual respect, or other values and morals like that you could say is the foundation of civilization. What I'm talking about here is the functional foundation of civilization. And it is global. It has nothing to do with the laws and regulations. Obviously, there are laws and regulations that try to affect it, but on face, it is not some kind of national or regional thing. It is a global thing. It's a necessary foundation for human civilization. We use it to create order and to transact and interact with one another in a way that we can do it without. I can do it with somebody I disagree with completely about anything. This is why we say Bitcoin is for enemies, right? Money is for enemies. Like, we can transact with our enemies with money. It's a neutral thing, even though we try to make it not neutral sometimes. So when the money collapses, this is what happens. And that's why we do need Bitcoin, because the US is also facing this. We always think it can't happen to us, Brandon, but the dollar has been inflating faster and faster. More dollars have been created faster and faster. I think 40% roughly of all dollars created in American history has happened in the last 10 years. Something like that. Directionally correct. So we're on the same path, though slower, but it's a gradually then suddenly situation, right?
Absolutely right. Couple points on Iran. So first off, feel awful for the Iranian citizens. Sounds like a massacre. Turn off the internet, shut down protests violently. I've heard numbers of tens of thousands killed. That's awful. So that's step one. Step two, in the fourth turning context, I think there's a couple interesting points here. One, it feels like this is the first fourth turning that's entirely global. This isn't an American thing. This isn't even a Western thing. It seems, from my perspective, that after World War II, which was pretty global, the world synchronized their generational cycles all together at that point.
Yeah.
So we're seeing the rise of populism on the left and the right all over the world. Governments being overthrown, things that you would have never thought possible 10 years ago, 20 years ago, now happening practically every day. And so it feels to me, number one, we're in a global fourth turning. And number two, what else is unique here is that normally fourth turnings begin in a period of relative harder money or lower debt. Business as usual, then a crisis occurs, and then the money printer goes crazy to try to buy our way out of the crisis. You end the crisis with lots of debt, and you work your way out of that debt over the next decade or so. That's the standard template. However, this time we're starting with debt up to our eyeballs. And that is a very different spot to be in. It makes us a lot more fragile. And I think it puts the currencies at risk around the world. Obviously, the Iranian one, more or less hyperinflating, many other examples. And so to me, that feels like this fourth turning has another access, and that access will give us more volatility, because if you're in debt up to your eyeballs and you have currency issues, that affects the average person really negatively. And yeah, that's going to lead to protests. Cities are going to burn, etc. And so not a good sign. Luckily, this is the first fourth turning with already easy money, and it's also the first fourth turning with Bitcoin. And so this probably doesn't feel good for the Iranians who don't have Bitcoin today, but at least we do have a tool, voluntary, for people to opt into to at least protect their wealth And hopefully that serves as a counterbalance to the increased volatility that I would expect. It's not going to be evenly distributed, but those who are looking hopefully can find an answer to mitigate some of the downside.
Venezuela is also experiencing some upheaval and has been for quite some time under Maduro. There were periods of very quick inflation several times during his reign, you could say. So this crisis escalated. There was years of economic collapse and hyperinflation. There were kind of periods where it slowed down at least, but several spikes. Now it's become this acute geopolitical flashpoint, right? Because the United States did launch a military operation in early January, captured President Nicolas Maduro, as we all know, and his wife, and they flew them to New York to face narco-terrorism charges. So the arrest, and there's ongoing U.S. strikes and a de facto oil blockade, which has been effective in stopping 6 or 7 oil tankers with carrying sanctioned oil. So Washington has Trump said outright that he wants to run Venezuela for the foreseeable future and transition its oil sector into more open to private, especially U.S. oil companies. So the opposition leader, who possibly we'll never know, or we may know at some point, won an election against Maduro, but obviously was not allowed to take power. She presented her Nobel Peace Prize to Trump as a symbolic gesture, which I thought was a very interesting move, probably a savvy political move. And she highlighted internal international debate over leadership, and at the same time, interim authorities under Delcy Rodriguez have engaged U.S. officials to stabilize the country and explore economic cooperation. I know that the market was up big in the days following the arrest of Maduro, and I've heard reports that this was welcome by at least a significant part of the citizenry in Venezuela. I think attitude will depend on whether or not it remains, will depend on what happens in the next few months in terms of control of Venezuela.
Yeah, I agree. I think a couple points here. One, just directly off your last one, I think the average person is happy about the regime change. But anytime you have a regime change, there is a power vacuum, like you mentioned. And I'm under no illusion that it's going to be smooth sailing for the country. Hopefully, the US can assist there. I don't know how helpful that will be. History shows that we don't seem to be very effective at nation building, so I'm skeptical. But hopefully, with a despotic leader out of the way, the people of Venezuela can take back their country and rebuild. That's one. The second one, just to make some light here, is that we're going through crazy times. And the one bright side here is that the internet is going to just meme the revolution. And so
yeah,
nonstop jokes. So one that absolutely killed me was it was Diddy and Maduro in jail together. And Diddy is whispering in Maduro's ear. He's, "Hey, bro, they got my oil too."
Let's go.
Oh, a little off color, but killed me. Had to share. And then the next one here is like, why? So to be honest, I'm not tracking this one close enough to have strong opinions here, but we were riffing pre-show, like, why would the US do this? We use some cover fire. Hey, there's bad people there. We're just trying to help, or drug dealers. Let's get rid of the drug dealers. But I think it looks more like geopolitical chess pieces moving around the board. Obviously, oil in Venezuela. They also have a lot of rare earths. And right now, China has a stranglehold on the rare earth market. But more specifically, they don't have the only supply of rare earths. They essentially have all the capacity to refine them, which is a nasty business.
Yeah.
Rare earths are not actually that rare. There's a lot in the US. We just have decided not to go after them. We'd rather have other countries take on that pollution. But I could see the US building a strong relationship with the new version of Venezuela and then saying, hey, why don't you guys mine the rare earths here and also refine them, and we'll buy everything you refine.
Yeah.
And so that seems to make sense. It sounds like some Chinese officials were visiting Venezuela near to the military operation. So there's also a world where China is trying to bring Venezuela into their side of the chessboard. And if that's true, that'd be very bad for the US. They're a little too close to home, strategic natural resources there. So I think those two things line up pretty well in my mind. Yeah. Any thoughts on implications or why?
I will address there was a rumor that floated around about roughly 600,000 Bitcoin being held by Venezuela and what's going to happen to that in this situation. There is no verification of that, no on-chain evidence, no reliable sources that this is actually true. It's a compelling rumor, and that's why it's continued to persist. But just in case anybody out there has heard of it, there's no evidence behind that. I think, I love the framing of Venezuela and becoming pulled into more of the open relationship in the markets for rare earths and for oil. I think it would be great for Venezuela and the citizens there. We know a couple of people. We have some good friends who are Bitcoiners from Venezuela and worked at Swan for some time. And it's a beautiful country and beautiful culture. So I think it would be good to have to bring them into the markets and help them build up it's been 3 decades or so of theft effectively from the top of all of the markets there. And so that's why the stock market reacted the way it did once he was taken out of the country. So I think it's probably a better future for Venezuela than it has been. And we'll see what the Trump administration does. Really, the ball's in their court right now, in his court right now. And we'll see what happens. He internationally has shown restraint. He doesn't create new wars. He's been trying to reduce them or stop them or bring on ceasefires. And so his international posture has been, I would say, relatively restrained. I think he leans toward let's bring them into the global marketplace and let's do business. He is a businessman. So if I had to guess, I think he'd lean in that direction, which would be good for Venezuela.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the other thing with Venezuela, people aren't aware, Venezuela is obviously natural resource rich. And in the 50s, 60s, 70s, they were the wealthiest country in South America. They're also one of the highest GDP per capita in the world during this period. And so you'd think a country like that would be able to maintain their posture of wealth because they're sitting on liquid gold under their feet. However, there's also a paradox here, which is often called the resource curse or the paradox of plenty. It goes by many names, but essentially says if you're a country with a natural resource glut under your ground, it leads to negative or malincentives, and you ultimately squander your resources. Some sort of human nature. It's like we don't have to work, we don't have to build out new industries, we don't have to diversify. We just milk the oil that we have underneath us. And that also leads to corruption because whoever's getting paid off the oil is outrageously rich. And oftentimes, like the case in Venezuela, the government takes over the resources and then they screw it up.
Consolidates all the power. Yeah.
Exactly. And so full circle here, let's say we get rid of the bad leader, taking advantage of the resources. I think Venezuela could have a very bright future. I'm optimistic about that. They have the capacity to do, but I wouldn't say forever because the same resource curse might bite them in the butt in 50 years again or 100 years again.
Yep.
So interesting challenge. I would say the Middle East seems to be dealing with that quite well right now, generally, diversifying out of oil and into alternative energy, investing in technology, investing in all kinds of non-correlated industries. I think that's the way out of it, but easier said than done. Next point you made is Trump's international policy being more like an international businessman. Yeah. That's absolutely true. And I was trying to find a quote in my fourth turning essay from a few years ago. And I'm not going to waste time looking it up now. But essentially, our founding fathers had a philosophy on foreign affairs, which was essentially, is this good for America? Is this good for trade for America? Mm-hmm. If the answer is no to that, we shouldn't be meddling abroad.
Yep.
So it's expand our markets with mutual economic relationships. That should be our primary foreign policy posture. Yep. And I agree with that. And I think we've gotten pretty far away from that after World War II. We took on the hegemonic position, and our leadership or deep state or whatever you call that, they did a lot of meddling abroad, which is maybe good for the economic empire, but it's certainly not good for the average American, let alone all the people we're blowing up abroad. And so I think it would be very positive for America if that pendulum swang back to OG American values, which was foreign policy is economic policy, period.